apologize for not getting this video to you sooner. I kind of forgot to record our lesson in class the other day, so just got home from kickboxing and I thought I'd go back and make the video for all of our at-home learners in case you have any questions. Just going to forewarn you, this lesson and the next lesson, they are all on standard form, which is our third way of writing an equation of a line. It is probably one of our tougher lessons all year. So just a heads up, make sure you watch the video all the way through because there are a lot of tricky parts. Okay, so right now we have two ways already of writing equation of line. We have slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. That one was really great for graphing. That was one of the pros of it. We had another one, point-slope form, which was y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. I think you all would agree that that one was super easy to write the equation of the line. If we were given a point, a slope, 2 points, it was just really fast and easy to do. Okay, so they both kind of have their pros of it. The one that we're going to talk about today, standard form, it is the one that is probably used the most in real life, and we're going to use it all the time in chapter 6. So this is kind of the introduction to it, but in chapter 6 we're really going to, like I said, use it a lot. It's going to be very heavy on standard form. Okay, so we're going to kind of talk about two different things today. One, how we can graph. So the first objective we're going to have is how we can graph equations using standard form. And then our second objective is how we can write an equation in standard form. And that one especially is the hard part. And we'll kind of work with it more in tomorrow's lesson. But first, we have our jokes. If you haven't noticed yet, the theme is dodgeball. I made up this joke. It is terrible. That's all right. Why was the swan bad at dodgeball? Answer is, he was ugly at ducking. Get it? Ugly ducking. Duckling. Sorry, it's terrible. Anyway, my favorite though is this picture because this is so true. That moment when you throw something at your friend, but it hits someone else. I think we all can relate to that at some point in our life. Okay, so we're just going to go through the notes together. If you have a question, you guys can send me a message through Schoology or send me an email, and I'd love to help you out because, again, this is kind of tougher. Okay, so what is similar about these ordered pairs? Well, let's first write the ordered pair. All right, so if we plotted the point A right there, if we wrote the coordinates for it, we have the point 0, 3. If we wrote the ordinate pair for B, we'd have 0, 1. C is 0, -1. D is 0, -4. Okay, so what do they all have in common? They all have a 0. And where do they have that 0? They all have it for the first number in the ordered pair. In other words, the x coordinate. Okay, so they all have an x coordinate of 0. We call those points, if they're part of a line, it doesn't matter what the line looks like, we call that, since it crosses your y-axis, we call that your y-intercept. All right, so we're used to seeing y-intercepts because slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, b is our y-intercept. So we're used to y-intercepts. But what we're not used to seeing are these. Again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to write the ordered pair for all 4 of these. So E is the point -3, 0. F is -2, 0. G is 1, 0. And H is 3, 0. What do they all have in common? They all have zeros as well, but they all have zeros for their y coordinates. So all of the y coordinates R0. And again, if a line went through any of these points, just randomly drawing lines, we would call that where it crosses the x-axis. So this would be the x-intercept. Okay, so we're going to use our x and our y-intercept to graph problems. Okay, so remember these intercepts here in just a second. We're going to use this to help us graph. But first, before we get there, let's talk about what is standard form. All right, standard form has to look like this. This is standard form of a line. It is ax plus by equals c. Now, a, b, and c just represent any integers. But notice a, b, and c cannot be fractions. Okay, and that's where it gets tricky. So that is going to be the part 2 after the commercial break. Okay, so why is this form helpful? Well, 1, we see it more often in everyday life. And 2, it helps us find both the x and y intercepts. And then we can graph. Okay, so in this form, it's really easy to find the x and the y-intercept. So let's go through one example. Our goal is to graph this equation right here. It's in standard form, ax plus by equals c. So that's our end goal, to be able to graph it. The quickest way of doing it and the easiest way to do this is to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So I'm going to go back to our page on x-intercepts. All right, x-intercepts. Notice by looking at all of your ordered pairs, they all have a 0 for the y. Okay, so if I'm finding the x-intercept, I know that my y has to be 0. Okay, so you'll start to see a quick shortcut, but for now I'm just going to show my work. I am going to take out the y and I'm going to plug in a 0. And if I solve this equation, it is going to tell me what my x-intercept. And so a lot of times people don't actually solve this equation, they'll just do it in their head because they get good at it, because 4 times 0 is anything, or sorry, is 0. And so it goes away. So a lot of times if we're finding the x-intercept, we want just x in the end. We want the y term and its coefficient to go away. So we plug in a 0. And so this is really our equation. 3x equals 24. And that's a really easy one to solve for. Divide by 3, and we get our x to be 8. So our graph crosses the x-axis at 8. Okay? So now let's find our y-intercept. Again, if we go back to the slides where we talked about y-intercepts, notice all of the y-intercepts had 0 for our x's. Okay, so if I'm finding the y-intercept, I know that my x-coordinate has to be 0. And again, it makes sense. If you're finding your y-intercept, we want the x to go away. I only want y in the end. So I'm going to take my x out and put a 0. And so a lot of people won't show this step because they know that the y term and its coefficient are just going to go away. And they could do this problem in their head, divide by 4. And our y-intercept here is going to be 6. Okay, but we still did not reach our end goal yet. We found our x-intercept and we found our y-intercept. But our goal is to graph them. Well, that's the easy part once you already have this. Okay, so here, same problem. Our x-intercept, so where it crosses our x-axis, is at the point 80. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is right there. The y-intercept is at the point 0, 6. Again, that's where it crosses your y-axis. So up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right there. And all we need to make a line are 2 points So if you draw a line through those 2 points, I'm just going to add arrows showing that that line goes on forever. That's your answer. We graphed it. Okay, so this is one way that you could graph lines. Again, the more you do it, the quicker you get at this. So let's do a few more just to practice a little bit. Now, I don't have a graph for these last two. We are just going to find the intercepts, and then we could always graph from there. Okay, so if I'm finding the x-intercept, I want the y to go away, so I know the y is going to be 0. So I'm going to cross off the y term. So really, it's going to be 7y equals 28, and our y is going to equal, divide by 7, or sorry, I already messed up, my bad. So our y term went away, so it was 7x equals 28. And if I divide by 7, x is going to equal 4. I just put a y instead of an x. Sorry about that. Okay, so that was your x-intercept. I'm going to go ahead and erase it. We're going to do the same thing. This time we're going to find our y-intercept. So this time, if I'm finding my y-intercept, I want my x to disappear. So my x is 0. So I'm going to cross out my x term. Now I didn't cross off the negative because the negative went with the 2y. And so this is actually the equation that you're going to solve. Negative 2y equals 28. And we're going to divide by negative 2. And we're going to get a y coordinate or a y-intercept of negative 14. And now if I had a graph, I could easily plot those 2 points on it and connect them to make the graph of this equation. All right, one last one. I believe there is one similar to this on the test, so I want to make sure we go through it. It's the same concept. The answers just look a little different. All right, so if we're finding our x-intercept, I want the y to go away. I want it to be 0. So I'm going to cancel out the y term. So I have negative 2x equals 11. I could divide by negative 2. And we would get an answer of negative 11 halves. Or you could answer that as negative 5.5 or negative 5.5. Either one would work. Okay, I'm going to erase that. We're going to find our y-intercept this time. If we want to find our y, I know our x has to go away, so our x has to be 0. Take out the x term. And this is where sometimes people get confused just because you don't get a nice, neat answer. 7y equals 11, I divide by 7. That's a really ugly decimal too, so I just keep my answer as a fraction. 11 over 7. You could also have 1 and 4/7. Either one would be perfectly acceptable. All right, before the break, I told you that this is most often seen in the real world. So here's an example of a real world problem. On our test, there is one almost identical to this, so make sure you pay close attention to this problem. So a media download store sells songs for $1 each and movies for $12 each. You have $60 to spend. Write and graph an equation that describes the items you can purchase. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my graph. Notice the x-axis is labeled. So here's our x-axis. It is labeled number of songs. So when we are talking about songs, we are talking about our x-axis. Our y-axis, up and down here, is labeled number of movies. So keep in mind, movies is y. Okay, so up here, a media download store sells songs. Songs, again, if I look down at my graph, songs is our x for $1 each. Okay, so if I'm writing this in standard form, I have 1x. Okay, plus we have movies. Movies again was our y-axis. So we have y there. Movies for $12 each. So 12 for each movie. And it says you have $60 to spend. That is our total amount to spend there. And that would be how we would first set it up. Okay, so we want to know how many items that we can purchase of each and still be in our $60 range. Okay, so we are going to be able to graph this. We need to find, just like on the other problems, find your intercepts. So if I'm finding my x-intercept, I know that my y has to be 0. Okay, so if I solved that equation, I would have 1x equals 60. So x must be 60. So I'm going to go ahead and put that point on my graph. On my x-axis, put a point at 60. Okay, if I'm finding my y-intercept, I want my x to be 0. My x term's going to go away. I'm going to end up with the equation 12y equals 60. And if I divide it by 12, our y would be 5. Plot that point on your y-axis. And I'm going to go ahead and connect those 2 points to make a straight line. Okay, now this straight line has all of our possible answers. Okay, so one answer that we could have right now is that we could buy 60 songs and we could buy no movies. That's one option. Another option is that we could buy no songs and 5 movies. That would give us, both of those options would give us exactly $60. But with the graph of this, we could even get some more options. Okay, so here's the graph again. We already had those options we talked about. There are more points on the line. So if I put a point right there, that shows that we could get buy 12 songs and we could buy 4 movies. Right here is another option. We could buy 24 songs and we could buy 3 movies. I can keep moving down and getting more options. We could buy 36 songs and 2 movies, and we could even do 48 songs and 1 movie. I ran out of blanks, but that is another option. So on our graph, we have 6 options there of what we could do with our $60. All right, we're gonna stop here. Actually, I'm not even going to put the commercial break in. We're just going to keep going ahead since it's up for our at-home learners. So we've got a few slides now. Okay, that we covered objective 1, how to graph given standard form. If we're given standard form, we want to graph, always find the intercepts. Here's the hard part. How to write equations in standard form. So for something to be exactly in standard form, the x term has to come first, then the y term, then we have to have an equals, and then we have to have a constant. In other words, a number without any variables. It has to be exactly like this for it to be in standard form. Now here's the tricky part. A, B, and C have to be integers. In other words, they cannot be fractions. Okay, so the first thing we're going to learn how to do is how to get rid of fractions. Okay, so to do this, we are going to get common denominators. And then we're going to multiply by that common denominator. And I'll show you how that happens, how that works out. Okay, so I need everything to have common denominators, not just one term. So every time I should have 3 terms or even more terms. So first thing I'm going to do is make them all fractions. Now obviously they do not have common denominators right now, but I know what the common denominator should be. Between 3 and 1, it's got to be 3. Okay, so 2/3 x is going to stay. I'm going to move my x in the numerator just because here in a second I'm going to get rid of denominators, so I don't want to lose anything important. The 3y over 1, I need to multiply it by 3. So that's going to give us 9y over 3. And I'm going to multiply the negative 5 over 1 by 3. And that's going to give us negative 15 over 3. All right, so now once they have common denominators, here's the easy part. Cancel out all the 3's. I think we did this earlier in the year, But the reason why they cancel out is because technically I'm multiplying everything by 3, which is going to cancel out that denominator. So that's kind of why it works. So that would give us an answer of 2x plus 9y equals negative 15. Notice the x term comes first, then the y term, then the equals, and then our constant. This would be our final answer in standard form. Okay, if you guys want to pause it, you can pause it and try this next one on your own. That's what we did in class. But I'm going to go ahead and show you the answer here. So first off, get everything to be a fraction. Then make common denominators. In this case, it would be 20. So we would multiply that by 5. So we'd have 5x plus multiply the second fraction by 4. That would give us 8y over 20. And the last fraction, I have to multiply it by 20. And that would give me 80 over 20. Once you have common denominators, cancel them out. So 5x plus 8y equals 80 would be your answer in standard form. And that is how we get rid of fractions. Now, I wish I could say that's it and we're done, but it even gets more complicated than this. Okay, because these were already kind of in standard form. They just had fractions that we had to get rid of. A lot of times they won't be in standard form. They're going to be in slope-intercept form, or they're going to be in point-slope form. Okay, so we have 2 slides left. Here, these equations right now are in slope-intercept form. They are in y equals mx plus b form. But I don't want it in that form. And this is what the test is going to ask for. They want us to change it to be in standard form, which is the x term first, then the y term, then the equals, then the constant. So I don't want to change this line. This is the line, but I want to rearrange everything to make it in the correct form. Okay, so I always ask myself, does the x term come first in this problem? Well, no, it doesn't. It comes after the equals, but I want it to come first. So is there a way I can make it come first? We're going to subtract it. Today in class, we talked a lot about if we switch the side, we're going to switch the sign. So if it was a positive 2x, it's got to be a negative 2x. All right, so now I have a negative 2x, a positive y, and it equals 4. And there we go. It is in standard form now. It's the x term first, then the y term, then the equals, and the constant. I will 100% accept this answer on your test. Some books and some teachers disagree with that, though. Sometimes they get really picky. Some people don't think that there should be a negative for the first term. All the other ones can be negative. Just some people think the first term should not be negative. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll multiply everything by -1. So that would give us a positive 2x, a negative y, and a negative 4. So both of those options are correct. It kind of depends on the teacher that you have. I will accept either answer though, just so you guys know. Okay, we're going to do one more like that one, except this one's going to be tougher because guess what it has in it? It's got a fraction. Okay, if I were you, as soon as I see a fraction, I would get rid of fractions. So I would make common denominators right away. You don't have to, but that's what I would do. So I would first make everything a fraction, and our common denominator here would be 2. So I'd multiply the first one by 2 to get 2y over 2 equals, it's already over 2, so -1/2 x. Plus, multiply that one by 2, which would give me 6 over 2. Okay, once they're all over 2, cancel them out. So I have 2y equals -1x plus 6. Now we're close, but our x term does not come first. So if we switch the side, we switch the sign. We're going to go from a -1x to a positive 1x. That would leave me with 1x, which I don't have to write the 1, so x, a positive 2y equals a 6. And that is the only correct answer because our a term is already positive, so I would not switch it to a negative. Okay. One more slide left. This, in my opinion, is probably the toughest. We're going to go from point slope form to standard form. Okay, anytime you see parentheses, that's the first thing that you take care of. Get rid of those parentheses. So we will have negative 3x and a negative 6. All right. I have a few things that are in the wrong spot. I want my x term to come first, so switch the side, switch the sign. That gives us 3x, a positive y, and a negative 9 equals a negative 6. Now it's close, but I want just one constant, not two of them, so I have to move that negative 9 to the other side. Again, switch the side, switch the sign. Final answer here would be 3x plus y equals 3. All right, last one. Same concept, but guess what? We've got a fraction, which makes it tougher. All right, so first off, distribute. Anytime you see parentheses, we always do that first. So 1/2 x minus 3/2. And we have y plus 2. All right, I see fractions. I can move things around, but I want to really get rid of those fractions first, so I don't have to deal with fractions. So get common denominators. In this case, it's going to be 2. Okay, so I'm going to multiply that first one by 2 to get 2y over 2. And multiply the second one by 2 to get 4 over 2. And the other ones are already over 2. And then we can cancel out those fractions. All right, so we are left with 2y plus 4 equals 1x minus 3. I want my x term to come first. Switch the side, switch the sign. So negative 1x plus 2y plus 4 equals negative 3. And I'm really close. I just have to send that 4 to the other side. So negative 1x plus 2y equals negative 7. Or you could have negative x instead of negative 1x. So that's one option. Again, some people disagree and say the first term should not be negative. If that's the case, I would multiply everything by negative 1, which would give us 1x minus 2y equals 7. So either one of those are totally acceptable to me. And might as well end up with a joke here. What cars make the best dodgeball players? Anything Dodge. All right, that's it for the notes, guys. Again, if you have any questions with it, don't hesitate to shoot me an email or send me a message on Schoology. We miss you guys. See ya.